"I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't on the guest list." The young woman at the graduation entrance said it gently, almost apologetically, but her words still landed like ice water down my spine. Around me, families moved forward in excited clusters, holding flowers and balloons, their faces glowing with pride beneath the warm May sunshine. I stood there clutching the navy blue invitation I had framed on my kitchen counter for 3 months, suddenly feeling foolish for wearing my late husband's pearl necklace and the cream blazer he always said made me look elegant. "There must be some mistake," I said quietly, forcing a smile as the line behind me shuffled impatiently. The girl checked her tablet again, then looked up at me with visible discomfort. The Whitmore family only reserved 4 seats. 4 seats. I swallowed hard. Daniel and Vanessa. Tyler. And probably Vanessa's sister, Rebecca, who somehow appeared at every family event despite contributing nothing except loud opinions and passive-aggressive smiles. The campus bells rang somewhere in the distance, and a wave of applause erupted from the football stadium where the ceremony was about to begin. I stepped aside slowly, careful not to make a scene. At 68 years old, dignity becomes a habit. You learn how to carry humiliation quietly. You learn how to stand still while your heart breaks in public. I looked down at the invitation again. Tyler's name was embossed in silver letters across the top. Bachelor of Political Science. Magna cum laude. I remember the night he got accepted into Crestview University 4 years earlier. He had run into my kitchen holding the letter with trembling hands, tears streaming down his cheeks, while Vanessa filmed everything on her phone for Facebook. "Grandma," he'd whispered after everyone else left the room. "I can't believe this is happening." Neither could I. Not after the tuition numbers arrived 2 weeks later. Daniel had pulled me aside one evening and admitted they were struggling financially. Vanessa's boutique had been losing money. Their mortgage payments had increased. Tyler's scholarships covered only part of the cost. I remember sitting awake that entire night at my dining room table with a calculator, old bank statements, and Harold's retirement account spread around me like puzzle pieces. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I sold Harold's baby grand piano 3 days later. The same piano he played every Christmas Eve for 42 years. Tyler never knew. None of them did. Every semester after that, I quietly transferred money into Daniel's account. Tuition, housing, books, meal plans. When Tyler studied abroad in London during his junior year, I paid for that too. "You gave that boy his future," my best friend Margaret once told me over coffee. At the time, hearing those words filled me with pride. Standing outside that graduation gate now, hearing strangers cheer for children I'd never met while my own family erased me from the guest list, those same words suddenly felt very different. A gust of wind lifted the corner of my invitation. I folded it carefully and slipped it back into my purse just as I noticed Vanessa walking across the courtyard in a pale pink dress, laughing beside Daniel. Then Tyler turned toward the entrance, and for one brief moment our eyes met. Tyler's smile disappeared the moment he saw me standing outside the gate. Even from 50 feet away, I recognized the confusion on his face. He said something quickly to Vanessa and Daniel before stepping away from the crowd and hurrying toward me across the courtyard, his black graduation gown flapping behind him in the spring breeze. "Grandma," he said breathlessly when he reached me. "What are you doing out here?" I opened my mouth, but for a moment no words came. Up close, he still looked like the little boy who used to fall asleep on my couch after eating too much birthday cake. The same soft blue eyes, the same nervous habit of tugging at his sleeve when he was anxious. "They said my name was not on the guest list," I finally answered quietly. Tyler blinked at me as though he had misheard. "What?" The woman at the entrance said only 4 seats were reserved. His expression shifted instantly from confusion to disbelief. "That does not make any sense. Mom told me you said you did not want to come because crowds make you uncomfortable now." I felt something inside my chest tighten painfully. Vanessa had not only excluded me, she had rewritten the story completely. "I never said that," I whispered. Tyler stared at me for several seconds without speaking. Behind him, families continued streaming into the stadium, carrying flowers and cameras, while cheerful music echoed across the campus lawn. But around us, everything suddenly felt strangely still. "Grandma," he said slowly, "Mom told me weeks ago that you wanted to celebrate privately later because ceremonies like this were exhausting for you." I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly, so I folded them together in front of my purse. "I bought a new outfit for today," I said before I could stop myself. "I even had my hair done yesterday." Tyler's face went pale. He turned instinctively toward the stadium entrance where Vanessa stood laughing beside Rebecca near the security checkpoint. The moment she noticed us talking, her smile disappeared. Even from a distance, I could see her shoulders stiffen. Daniel followed her gaze and immediately looked away the second he saw me. That hurt more than I expected, not because he excluded me, but because he could not even meet my eyes afterward. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. "There has to be some mistake," he muttered, though his voice no longer sounded confident. I almost told him then. About the tuition payments. About Harold's piano. About the retirement account. I slowly drained one semester at a time, while Vanessa posted vacation photos from Napa Valley and Aspen every winter. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe exhaustion. Or maybe the realization that the truth would destroy this day for him forever. Tyler glanced back toward the entrance again. Vanessa was walking toward us now, her heels striking sharply against the pavement. Even at a distance, I recognized that expression on her face. The tight smile. The controlled panic hiding underneath perfect makeup and polished manners. "Tyler," she called sweetly, loud enough for nearby families to hear. "The ceremony is about to start." But Tyler did not move. For the first time in years, he kept his eyes fixed on me instead of her. And then he asked the one question Vanessa clearly never expected him to ask. "Grandma," he said quietly, "why would Mom lie to me about this?" In the next part, an old family secret begins to surface, and one unexpected document changes the entire meaning of Tyler's graduation day. Vanessa thought she controlled the story. She forgot someone else had kept every receipt. Vanessa stopped a few feet away from us, her smile perfectly arranged despite the tension visible in her eyes. "There you are," she said brightly to Tyler, ignoring me completely at first. "The dean is about to begin the opening remarks." Tyler did not answer. He kept staring at her with a look I had never seen on his face before. Not anger exactly. Confusion. The kind that comes when someone you trust suddenly feels unfamiliar. Vanessa finally turned toward me with a polite expression so rehearsed it almost looked painful. "Eleanor," she said lightly, "I thought we agreed this would be easier for everyone." Easier. Such a small word for something so cruel. I looked at her quietly for a moment. The expensive sunglasses resting on her blonde hair probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Her pale pink dress still had department store creases near the hemline. She had bought it recently, probably for today. Vanessa always dressed beautifully for public events. Appearances mattered deeply to her. "We never agreed on anything," I replied softly. Tyler looked between us. "Mom," he said slowly, "did you tell Grandma not to come?" Vanessa let out a small laugh, the kind people use when they're cornered but still trying to sound calm. "Of course not. Tyler, do not make this dramatic right before your ceremony." Daniel finally approached us then, his face pale and tense beneath the bright afternoon sunlight. He loosened his tie slightly before speaking. "Maybe we should talk about this later," he muttered. That sentence told me everything. Not denial, not surprise, just discomfort. He had known. My son had known all along. Tyler stared at his father in disbelief. "You knew she was not invited?" Daniel rubbed his forehead like a man already exhausted by consequences he had hoped to avoid. "It was complicated," he said quietly. "The seating was limited." I almost smiled at that. Crestview Stadium seated nearly 18,000 people. I had looked it up online 3 weeks earlier because I wanted to know where Tyler would walk across the stage. Vanessa crossed her arms tightly. "We only had a certain number of family tickets," she said sharply now, her polished mask beginning to crack. "Rebecca flew in from Chicago. Daniel's business partner came because he helped Tyler get an internship. We had to make choices." Choices. I thought about the winter Tyler called me crying because his campus housing payment was overdue. I remembered mailing $12,000 the next morning without telling anyone. I remembered skipping my arthritis treatments for 2 months afterward because the insurance copay had become too expensive. But I said none of that. Tyler looked physically ill now. "Grandma helped me more than anyone," he whispered. Vanessa immediately stepped closer to him. "Tyler, sweetheart, today is about celebrating your future. Please do not let unnecessary family tension ruin this moment." Unnecessary. The words settled heavily between us. Then a familiar voice suddenly called my name from across the courtyard. "Eleanor." I turned and saw Howard Green walking toward us, carrying a thick brown envelope beneath his arm. My stomach tightened instantly. Howard had handled Harold's estate after my husband passed away 8 years earlier. He was not supposed to be here today. Vanessa's face lost all color the second she recognized him. And when Howard stopped beside me, he looked directly at Tyler before saying something that made the entire courtyard fall silent around us. "I believe your grandmother never told you where your tuition money really came from." In the next part, long-hidden financial records begin surfacing in the middle of graduation day, and Tyler discovers the sacrifice that changed his entire life. Some secrets stay buried for years. Others arrive, carrying envelopes. The wind carried the distant sound of applause across the courtyard as Howard Green slowly opened the brown envelope in his hands. Around us, graduates continued taking photographs beside fountains and flower beds, laughing with their families beneath the bright blue sky. But inside our small circle, everything had gone painfully quiet. Tyler looked from Howard to me with growing confusion. "What does that mean?" he asked carefully. Howard adjusted his glasses before answering. "Your grandmother instructed me years ago not to discuss certain financial arrangements unless it became necessary." Vanessa immediately stepped forward. "Howard, this is not the time for private family matters," she said sharply. He barely looked at her. "Actually," he replied calmly, "this became the time the moment Eleanor was denied a seat at the graduation she personally helped finance." Tyler frowned. "Finance?" Howard reached into the envelope and removed several neatly organized copies of bank statements. I felt my chest tighten as I recognized the documents instantly. My retirement withdrawals, wire transfers, tuition receipts, for years of quiet sacrifice stacked together on expensive legal paper. Beginning August 12, 4 years ago, Howard said gently, "Your grandmother transferred funds every semester directly into an account belonging to your parents." Tyler stared blankly at the papers. "No," Vanessa interrupted quickly, forcing out a nervous laugh. "Daniel and I paid Tyler's tuition ourselves." Howard calmly handed one document to Tyler. "Then perhaps you should review the transfer records." Tyler took the paper slowly. I watched his expression change line by line. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something far heavier. "This says $87,000, he whispered. Howard nodded once. "That does not include housing assistance, study abroad expenses, textbooks, or emergency transfers." Tyler looked up at me as though he no longer recognized the woman standing in front of him. "Grandma, you paid all this?" I tried to answer lightly. "Not all of it," but my voice sounded weaker than I intended. Daniel suddenly stepped backward, rubbing both hands over his face. "Mom," he muttered quietly, unable to look at me. I told Vanessa this would eventually come out. Tyler's head snapped toward him. "You knew." Daniel swallowed hard. "At first we planned to tell you after graduation," he admitted. But then he stopped speaking. Vanessa folded her arms tightly across her chest. "We did what we had to do," she said coldly now. Tyler needed opportunities. Eleanor offered to help. Offered. I thought about the afternoon I sold Harold's piano. The movers carried it out of my living room while I stood at the kitchen sink, pretending not to cry. 42 years of Christmas songs disappearing down my driveway because my grandson deserved a future without debt. Tyler looked physically shaken now. "Mom," he said slowly, "did you tell people you and Dad paid for college?" Vanessa hesitated for one fatal second too long. That silence answered everything. Nearby, Another round of applause thundered from inside the stadium. More graduates crossing the stage. More proud families standing to cheer. Tyler lowered the papers carefully, almost reverently, like they suddenly weighed too much to hold. Then his eyes landed on one final document, still sticking halfway out of Howard's envelope. "What is that?" he asked quietly. Howard glanced toward me first. I immediately felt cold, because I knew exactly which paper remained inside. The agreement Daniel begged me to sign 3 years earlier. The one Vanessa insisted would protect the family financially. And Tyler had clearly never seen it before. In the next part, an old document resurfaces that changes Tyler's understanding of his parents completely. Some betrayals happen quietly over years. Others are hidden behind signatures. Tyler reached slowly toward the final document still resting inside Howard's envelope. But Vanessa moved first. "That is enough," she said sharply, stepping forward with a smile, so tight it barely looked human anymore. "This is completely inappropriate for today." Howard calmly pulled the envelope slightly closer to himself. "I disagree." The afternoon sunlight caught the gold Crestview University seal embossed across the top page as Tyler stared at it with growing unease. "What is it?" he asked again, this time more firmly. Daniel closed his eyes briefly before speaking. "Tyler, maybe we should discuss this privately later." "No," Tyler replied immediately. "I want to know now." I watched my grandson carefully. Something had shifted inside him over the last few minutes. The blind trust he carried toward his parents was cracking apart piece by piece, and I hated how painful that realization looked on his face. Howard finally removed the document completely and handed it to Tyler. 3 years ago, he explained quietly, "Your parents requested that Eleanor sign a financial protection agreement tied to future inheritance and educational support." Tyler frowned as he scanned the first page. Then his expression changed instantly. "This says Grandma agreed to continue funding my education in exchange for giving up future ownership claims to the lake house." Silence settled over all of us. Even the distant stadium noise suddenly felt muted. Tyler looked up slowly. The lake house. My stomach tightened painfully. Harold's lake house sat 2 hours north near Lake Briarwood. It had been in our family for nearly 30 years. Tyler learned to fish there as a child. Every 4th of July, we sat on the dock eating peach cobbler while Harold grilled hamburgers nearby. After Harold died, the house became the only place where I still felt close to him. Vanessa crossed her arms defensively. "The property taxes were becoming impossible," she said quickly. "Daniel and I were trying to help manage things responsibly." Tyler kept reading. His face grew paler with every line. "This agreement, says Grandma, would eventually transfer partial ownership to Mom and Dad." Daniel finally spoke, his voice low with shame. "Vanessa thought it would make estate planning simpler." Simpler. Such a clean word for something so ugly. Tyler looked directly at me. "Did you sign this?" I hesitated. That hesitation answered him before I even spoke. "Yes," I admitted softly, "but only because your father told me you might have to leave school if I did not help." Tyler stared at Daniel like he had never truly seen him before. "You told Grandma I might drop out?" Daniel looked away immediately. Vanessa stepped in again before he could answer. "We were under pressure financially," she snapped. "You have no idea what parents sacrifice." I almost laughed at that. Sacrifice. I remembered eating canned soup for 2 weeks after paying Tyler's London housing deposit because I could not afford groceries until my next Social Security check arrived. Tyler lowered the papers slowly. His graduation gown fluttered in the breeze while students nearby celebrated one of the happiest days of their lives. But my grandson stood frozen in the middle of the courtyard, looking like the ground beneath him had disappeared. Then his eyes landed on the final paragraph near the bottom of the agreement. I saw the exact moment he noticed the signature date. "Wait," he whispered. "This was signed the same month Grandpa died." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Vanessa immediately looked nervous again, because Tyler had just uncovered the one detail she never wanted him to notice. In the next part, Tyler begins piecing together what really happened during the months after Harold's funeral and an old conversation suddenly takes on a completely different meaning. Grief makes people vulnerable. Some families know exactly how to use that. Tyler kept staring at the signature date as though the numbers themselves had become impossible to understand. June 17th, just 3 weeks after Harold's funeral. I could almost see the memories moving behind his eyes now, old conversations rearranging themselves into something darker. Grandpa had barely been gone, he whispered. Nobody answered him. The spring wind rustled through the trees lining the courtyard while graduates hurried past us carrying bouquets and posing for photographs beside the university fountain. Life continued around us as though nothing had changed. But for Tyler, everything already had. "Mom," he said slowly, turning toward Vanessa, "why would Grandma sign something like this right after Grandpa died?" Vanessa lifted her chin defensively. "Because your grandmother trusted us to help manage things after she was alone." Alone. The words settled heavily inside me. After Harold died, the house became unbearably quiet at night. I would still wake up expecting to hear the television downstairs or smell coffee brewing in the kitchen. Grief does strange things to time. Entire weeks disappear while you are trying to remember how to exist without the person who made life feel familiar. Daniel had started visiting more often back then. At the time, I thought he was worried about me. Now I understood something else entirely. Tyler looked at his father again. "Did you ask Grandma to sign this?" Daniel hesitated too long. "We thought it would be practical," he finally admitted weakly. "Vanessa and I were helping with bills and maintenance." I lowered my eyes quietly. That part was technically true. Daniel mowed the lawn twice that summer. Vanessa hired someone to clean the gutters once before posting photos online captioned, "Taking care of family matters." But they never mentioned the documents arriving afterward. The endless conversations about property taxes. The subtle suggestions that the lake house was too much responsibility for someone my age. Tyler suddenly laughed once under his breath, but there was no humor in it. "You told everyone Grandma could barely manage living alone." Vanessa crossed her arms tighter. She was grieving. We were trying to protect her. Protect me. I remembered signing those papers at Daniel's dining room table, while Vanessa slid documents toward me one page at a time beside a plate of untouched blueberry muffins. She kept speaking softly the entire afternoon, explaining legal terms I barely absorbed through the fog of morning. "This just keeps things simple for the future, Eleanor. This protects Tyler's education. This avoids probate headaches later." At one point I remember asking whether Harold would have wanted this. Vanessa smiled gently and touched my hand. "Harold would want Tyler secure." That sentence broke me, because Harold loved Tyler more than anything in the world. Tyler looked physically sick now. "Did Grandpa even know about this agreement before he died?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than all the others. Daniel immediately looked away. Vanessa opened her mouth, then stopped. Howard Green finally spoke instead. "Actually," he said carefully, "Harold contacted me privately 6 months before his death regarding concerns about future financial pressure on Eleanor." My heart stopped. I slowly turned toward Howard. "What are you talking about?" He looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "There is another document," he admitted quietly. Vanessa's face drained of color instantly. Tyler stared at him. "Another document?" Howard nodded once. "Your grandfather left instructions that were never supposed to become necessary unless Eleanor's financial generosity was abused." Even the wind seemed to disappear after those words, because suddenly everyone understood the same terrifying thing at once. Harold had seen something coming long before any of us did. In the next part, a final safeguard left behind by Harold begins to surface, and Vanessa realizes. The man she underestimated may have anticipated everything. Some people leave money behind after they die. Others leave protection. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The sounds of graduation day continued around us like distant echoes from another world. Somewhere nearby, parents laughed while camera shutters clicked rapidly in the sunlight. But standing there beside the entrance gates, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. Tyler stared at Howard Green with wide, unsteady eyes. "What kind of protection did Grandpa leave?" he asked quietly. Howard hesitated before answering. Harold amended portions of his estate 6 months before his passing. He was concerned Eleanor might eventually be pressured into sacrificing too much financially for the family. Vanessa immediately let out a sharp breath. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. Harold adored Tyler. "He did," Howard replied calmly. "That is exactly why he created safeguards." Tyler looked completely lost now. Safeguard against what? Nobody answered right away, because suddenly the truth hanging between us felt too ugly to say aloud. Against us, against family, against the possibility that grief and love could be manipulated. I lowered my eyes toward the brick walkway beneath my feet. Harold and I used to joke that I would give away our entire savings account if someone cried hard enough in front of me. "You have the softest heart in Michigan," he always said with a smile. At the time, it sounded romantic. Standing there now, it sounded like a warning. Howard carefully removed another folded paper from inside the envelope. The edges looked older than the other documents. "Harold instructed me to hold this unless Eleanor's financial support was exploited while she was being isolated from major family decisions." Tyler frowned immediately. "Isolated?" Howard looked directly at him. "Being excluded from today's ceremony qualifies." Vanessa shook her head in disbelief. "This is insane. We invited immediate family only." Tyler looked at her slowly. "Grandma's immediate family." The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, she truly looked nervous. Daniel still had not said much. He stood slightly behind Vanessa now, staring toward the stadium like he wanted to disappear into the crowd. I realized then how weak my son had become over the years. Not cruel exactly, just passive enough to let cruelty happen beside him. Tyler unfolded the paper Howard handed him. I watched his eyes scan line after line in silence. Then suddenly he stopped breathing for a second. "No way," he whispered. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" Tyler looked up slowly, stunned. "Grandpa created a separate trust." Vanessa went completely still. Howard nodded once. "A private educational trust originally intended for future great-grandchildren and emergency family support." Tyler kept reading with shaking hands. "It says here if Eleanor is ever intentionally excluded, manipulated financially, or pressured regarding family assets, the trust control transfers immediately." Daniel finally looked alarmed. "Transfers to who?" Tyler swallowed hard before answering. "To Grandma." Silence crashed over all of us. Even Howard seemed uncomfortable now. Vanessa stared at the paper like it had personally betrayed her. "That trust was supposed to help all of us eventually," she said weakly. Howard adjusted his glasses. Harold anticipated that possibility, which is why he included another clause. Tyler looked down again. His face changed instantly after reading the final paragraph. Slowly, almost mechanically, he raised his eyes toward his mother. "Mom," he said quietly, "why does this document specifically mention you by name?" Vanessa's entire expression collapsed at once. Because whatever Harold saw before he died, he had apparently written it down in detail. In the next part, Tyler uncovers a conversation Harold secretly documented before his death, and Vanessa realizes the past she buried may finally surface. In front of everyone, some people leave behind memories. Harold left evidence. Vanessa's face had gone completely pale now, the kind of pale that no makeup can hide. Around us, graduates continued pouring out of the stadium entrance laughing and hugging relatives, completely unaware that my family was quietly unraveling beside the courtyard fountain. Tyler stared at the document in his hands like it might suddenly change if he looked long enough. "Why would Grandpa specifically name Mom?" he asked again, more firmly this time. Howard let out a slow breath before answering. "About 7 months before his death, Harold requested a private meeting with me. He expressed concerns regarding several conversations he overheard involving family finances and future property expectations." Vanessa immediately shook her head. "This is absurd." But her voice no longer sounded confident. It sounded frightened. Tyler looked directly at her. What conversations? She crossed her arms tightly and glanced toward Daniel for support. He still refused to look at anyone directly. It was nothing, Vanessa said quickly. Your grandfather misunderstood things. Howard remained calm. Harold did not believe he misunderstood. My chest tightened painfully. Harold never told me any of this while he was alive. Suddenly, small moments from his final year began replaying themselves differently inside my mind. The nights he stayed unusually quiet after family dinners. The way he watched Vanessa, sometimes when she talked about future assets or long-term planning. Back then, I thought he was simply tired from chemotherapy. Now I wondered what else he had noticed while I was too busy trying to keep everyone together. Tyler lowered his eyes to the page again. It says Grandpa documented concerns after Thanksgiving dinner. My stomach dropped instantly. Thanksgiving. I remembered that night perfectly. Vanessa had spent most of the evening discussing rising lakefront property values near Briarwood, while Daniel joked about eventually turning the lake house into a luxury vacation rental. I had laughed politely at the time because I thought it was harmless conversation. Harold barely spoke for the rest of the night. Tyler looked up slowly. Mom, he said quietly, did Grandpa hear you talking about Grandma's house before he died? Vanessa's silence answered him more loudly than words ever could. Finally, she snapped. Everybody talks about inheritance eventually. That does not make us criminals. The bitterness in her voice startled even Daniel. Howard carefully removed another folded sheet from the envelope. Harold wrote a personal statement after that dinner, he explained. I was instructed to keep it sealed unless Eleanor was financially manipulated or intentionally excluded from family milestones. Tyler swallowed hard. Can I read it? Howard hesitated. Then he handed him the paper. I watched Tyler unfold it slowly. Harold's handwriting covered the page in uneven blue ink, shakier than it used to be near the end of his illness. Tyler read silently for several seconds before his entire expression changed. Oh my God, he whispered. My hands began trembling. What did he say? Tyler looked up at me with tears forming in his eyes. Grandpa wrote that he was afraid you loved us so much you would let us take everything from you. The words hit me harder than anything else that day, because Harold knew me that well. He knew exactly how far I would go for family, even when family did not deserve it. Tyler looked back down at the letter again. Then suddenly his face tightened with shock. There is more, he whispered. Vanessa stepped forward immediately. Tyler, stop reading that. But Tyler ignored her completely now. His eyes moved rapidly across the bottom half of the page before he slowly raised his head toward his mother. Grandpa wrote that he overheard you say something after dinner. Vanessa froze. Completely froze. He wrote that you told Dad, once Eleanor signs everything over, we will never have to worry about money. Again, the courtyard seemed to go silent around us, because deep down, everyone already knew the worst part was not whether Harold heard those words. It was whether they were true. In the next part, Tyler confronts the final hidden layer of deception, and Daniel is forced to admit something he has buried for years. Some lies destroy trust. Others expose who people really were all along. Vanessa opened her mouth twice before any sound finally came out. That is not what I meant, she said weakly, but even she seemed to hear how hollow the words sounded now. Tyler stood perfectly still, holding Harold's letter in trembling hands while the late afternoon sunlight stretched long shadows across the courtyard bricks. Around us, the graduation celebration was slowly winding down. Families were gathering belongings, carrying flower bouquets toward parking lots, hugging children before long drives home. But my family remained frozen in the middle of a moment none of us could undo. Tyler looked toward his father. Dad, he said quietly, is it true? Daniel rubbed both hands over his face before finally nodding once. The smallest nod imaginable. But it was enough. I felt something inside me break then, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like an old floorboard finally giving way after years of pressure. I never wanted things to go this far, Daniel whispered. Tyler stared at him in disbelief. You let Grandma sell Grandpa's piano. Daniel looked down immediately. We were drowning financially after the recession, he admitted weakly. The boutique was failing. We were behind on mortgage payments. Tyler, you were about to start college, and I panicked. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. We did what parents do. We protected our family. Tyler turned toward her so sharply that even she stepped back slightly. By lying to Grandma? By pretending you paid for my education? By cutting her out of graduation after she sacrificed everything? Vanessa crossed her arms tightly again, but this time the gesture looked less defensive and more desperate. You do not understand the pressure we were under, she snapped. Your grandmother always offered help. She wanted to feel needed. The sentence hit me harder than all the others, because buried underneath the cruelty was a terrible kind of truth. I had wanted to feel useful after Harold died. I wanted my family to still need me. And little by little, they learned exactly how much of myself I would give away if they asked gently enough. Tyler looked at me then, his eyes filled with something I had not seen there since he was a child. Shame. Grandma, he whispered, why did you never tell me? I smiled sadly. Because I never wanted you to feel guilty for chasing your future. Tyler lowered his head immediately. A tear slipped down his cheek before he wiped it away quickly with the sleeve of his graduation gown. Nearby, another family burst into applause while taking photos beside the fountain. The contrast felt surreal. Howard Green quietly gathered the scattered documents back into the envelope while silence settled over us again. Then Tyler suddenly reached into his pocket and pulled out his graduation program. Slowly, carefully, he unfolded it and stared down at the inside dedication page. Oh my God, he whispered. Vanessa's face tightened instantly. Tyler, she warned softly, but he ignored her completely. You changed it. My stomach tightened. Change what? Tyler looked up at me with devastation written all over his face. The original dedication page, thank you. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Tyler held up the program with shaking hands. I wrote an entire paragraph about Grandma helping me through college, he said quietly. I submitted it months ago. He slowly turned the booklet toward us. The printed dedication now read, Special thanks to my parents for their endless support and sacrifice. Nothing else. My vision blurred for a second. Vanessa looked away immediately. That told me everything. Tyler stared at his mother in stunned silence. You removed her name? He whispered. Vanessa finally lost the polished calm she had carried all day. Because everything always became about Eleanor, she snapped bitterly. Even today was supposed to be about you, Tyler, not another performance about what she sacrificed. The words echoed between us like something poisonous finally exposed to sunlight. Tyler looked at his mother as though he no longer recognized her at all. Then slowly, without another word, he reached up and removed the graduation medal hanging around his neck. And when he turned toward me holding in his hands, Vanessa suddenly realized she was about to lose something far more important than money.